Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about motivation, emotion, and stress. So, this is a pretty important chapter because it's relevant for all of you. But for example, just to get out of bed today, you had to have some kind of emotion attached to a motivation. So, most of us probably had to get up super early today and go to school or go to work. And I bet you were kind of thinking, like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to be able to turn the alarm clock on and just sleep a little bit longer, but we're all driven by these other motivations, such as the need to make money or the need to get a college degree to satisfy your goals in life so that you end up happy. So, when we're talking about motivation, we're talking about these inner pushes and these external pulls that are associated with our behavior. So, again, for this morning, you might not want to get up, but you had these inner drives. Like, I want to get a college degree more than I want to sleep. So you got out of bed. Okay, those are your inner pulls. Then you also have these external pulls. Like, you live in a capitalist economy. And in a capitalist economy, the best way to make money to be able to take care of yourself is to get a job. So you guys are being pulled not only to go to school for those inner pushes, but also the pulls such as you need to get a job to be able to make money. Okay, so when we're talking about motivation, we're defining this as those interplay between nature, the bodily pushes, and nurture, the pulls from the external environment. Okay, and again, you can think about this a lot of ways in your life. So think about to yourself, like, what is driving you? So you have all these inner drives, these inner pushes, and they're not just things like goals and, trying to become successful and getting yourself a house and a car and stuff like that, things that you want. It's also about your body driving you and your unconscious mind. Because again, how much are your hormones driving you? How much is your body's need for hunger and thirst and shelter and warmth and attachment? How much of that is driving you? How much of your unconscious mind is driving you? So, do you ever find yourself just kind of emotional and all of a sudden you don't really know why, but you're emotional and you're being motivated to do something and you don't really understand it because that's your body and your emotions talking to your consciousness, telling you to think about things that you're feeling so you can be aware of what your body and your mind are trying to signal to you. And I think relationships are a pretty good example of how this actually plays out. Because think about it, like again, all of us want to have nice, happy relationships where we don't have conflict, right? But just think about a time where maybe you had an argument or you got into like a slight fight with the person you're with, for example, and all of a sudden you find yourself completely full of emotions, and all of a sudden you're just spouting off this and spouting off that. And you don't even really know why you're doing it, but you're just full of emotion and you're like, blah, 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 blah. And then a couple seconds later, your conscious mind kicks in and you realize what you're doing and you're like, why am I acting out? Why am I acting like an idiot? Just because my feelings are hurt, because of whatever reason, because I'm in this silly fight, for example. But that's an example of like how all of a sudden your emotions, your body, these physiological responses are cueing in your consciousness and telling you to think about things like you're upset, you're not happy right now, you're feeling things, and your consciousness is then reflecting upon what you're feeling, for example, and then you catch yourself realizing that you're acting out, you don't even know why, and then 2 seconds later your consciousness kicks in and you're like, I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm having a little temper tantrum right now and acting like a 4-year-old child, even though I'm supposed to be 30. But again, think about it. We all have that, right? Think about some time when you're driving in a car and all of a sudden some person cuts you off and you're full of emotion, you're all angry and you don't know why, but you do kind of know why, but it's basically that person cut you off. And then your conscious mind kicks in and you're like, oh, why am I all upset? I mean, I'm just driving, people are going to cut you off sometimes. Why am I letting this get to me? Well, again, those inner drives, those inner emotions, that unconscious mind is driving you. It is, associated with your behavior, associated with your frustration. And then your conscious mind is then kicking in and reflecting upon what you're feeling and what you're thinking and whether or not you actually want to behave in this way. But again, it's that interplay between your inner self and your social self and your inner biology driving you and your social self checking you, and then this external pulls from stimuli in the external environment that are also causing responses in you. Okay? So there's a few theories of motivation. One, you have your instinct theory. And again, think about all those biological drives, the drives to mate, the drives to get food, the drives to get water and shelter and warmth, okay? So all of these inner drives, these predisposition biological behaviors that all human beings share. Okay, we're driven to seek out these experiences. Drive reduction theory talks about how your cognitions, your perception of situations is associated with how you respond to the pushes and pulls, how you respond with your motivated behavior, for example. And it also talks about the idea of maintaining homeostasis, maintaining a balance. Therefore, you guys are motivated by your emotions to maintain that balance. And so when you're off balance, like when you're hungry, you're then motivated to go find that balance by feeling full. So your biology is, telling your unconsciousness and your consciousness to go out and seek food. Okay? Arousal theory says that we are motivated by sensation seeking behavior, not just physiological. Okay? And then Maslow's classic hierarchy of needs, a humanistic perspective, talks about how our motivation is based upon a series of needs that go in order. First, we're motivated to take care of our basic survival needs: food, sex, shelter, water, warmth, attachment. Once we get that, we seek out safety and security. Once we have that, then we seek out the belongingness and love, acceptance from our group. Then, after that, we go into the phase of self actualization, which is driving, being motivated to fulfill our potential. And then, after that, we're motivated to go find meaning. So there's a lot of ways motivation comes into play. One, you have achievement, which is the desire to accomplish, master your environment, to control the environment. You have intrinsic motivation, doing something for its own sake, like seeking out knowledge because knowledge is so cool. Extrinsic motivation, like doing a job for money or to avoid punishment. So again, we all have this blend between our intrinsic and our extrinsic motivations. And so think about it. You guys are all going to college because you're being pulled to take a job. You live in a capitalist economy. You have to take a job. However, you also have these inner drives to, find meaning and potential and being able to fulfill the life that you want to do and to be happy with your life and achieve your own personal goals. And so hopefully by getting an education, most likely you're trying to balance that if I'm going to have to work because of the pulls from the economy, then I also am going to try to do a job that I love. So how do I get a job that I love? We go to get a degree. So again, this morning when you guys were deciding whether or not to get up and go to class today, you probably had to have that conversation in your head and probably go through a process of, even though you might want to sleep in a little bit, you have these external pulls where you need money and you have these intrinsic desires such as your goals, and you need to find a way to achieve both. And so what's the best way to do it? Or at least one way to do it is to get an education doing a job that you love, so that even though you're being pulled to make money, you're actually being pulled in the direction you want to go anyhow, because that's the job you would have been doing in the first place. So again, it's that nice balance, okay? All of us have a need to belong. We have attachment needs. So again, we are driven, we are motivated to seek out attachments. Again, do humans actually have instincts is a completely different conversation, but maybe the suckling is the only thing that might be an instinct. The rest of being human requires the social interaction from other people. Again, none of you would have developed if it wasn't for tons of people in your life interacting with you, teaching you, taking care of you. Okay? So we all have these needs, and that continues on. We have that need throughout our entire life, which is why we get in relationships, and maybe we have children, and why we maintain these relationships. Okay? The idea of group behavior and social behavior in general is built into your biology. So next time you go to call someone that you care about because you're thinking about them all the time, ask yourself why you're calling them. Is it your biology telling you to call that person because of your need to belong? And so you might be calling your mom or someone you care about, and you'll be like, well, why am I calling my mom right now? And you're like, well, why is my body telling me to call my mom right now? Why do I keep thinking about my mom? But why unconsciously do you keep thinking about your mom? Why do I engage in that kind of social behavior? How much of my biology is associated with those biological drives, the structure of my brain, the need to go be social? How much of that is motivating me to simply just call my mom once in a while, or every single day, or maybe twice or three times a day? Okay? So again, we're driven by these physiological processes like hunger. Okay, hunger is a physiological process. When you're hungry, your body kicks in hormones which travel through your bloodstream and enter the fleshy areas of your brain. And then that's your body's way of talking to your brain. And it tells your brain that you're hungry. So then your brain then tells your body to go out and go find food. Hence this biopsychosocial process. Okay. So again, you have all these different brain structures involved with emotion and eating and motivation. We're not going to go into all the detailed ones, but again, things like the hypothalamus are involved with appetite secreting and suppressing hormones. Okay, your body has this basal metabolic rate, and it's always trying to maintain that homeostasis. So when you don't get enough food, and you start to get hungry, your body then drives you and motivates you to go seek out food. Okay, and then emotions are at the heart of all of this because as we started out this conversation, I was saying that all of your motivations are attached to an emotion. Emotions are tools, okay? Your body, your unconscious mind, emotions drive you. So most of these emotional processes begin in the unconscious mind. Because think about the layers of your brain. You have the old part of your brain that's responsible for heart rate and breathing. Then you have the middle part of your brain, the limbic system, which is where most of your emotion centers are. And then your emotion centers, 90% of your neural pathways go from the middle brain, the limbic system, out to your outer cortex. So your inner brain is then talking to your outer cortex, telling you to reflect upon what you're feeling because it's your ability to reflect and be able to be conscious that occurs in your outer cerebral cortex. Okay. So this is very interesting in the idea that your unconscious mind and your body are communicating, and then that is sending signals to your brain that is cueing you in to what's happening on the inside of your body and what's happening on the outside of your body in the external world. Okay? And so your emotions are a tool that signal us into what is happening either inside and outside. And so, again, when we think about emotions, again, realize that emotions are nothing more than neurons releasing neurotransmitters and communicating with other neurons. And so, it's this communicating of neurons is what we actually experience as an emotion. So, when the neurons are firing, specific neurons are firing, we feel specific emotions. But the emotion itself is a social construct. We're the ones who apply words to the actual neurological process that's going on. Because when you're feeling something like joy or happiness or sadness, that's not just one emotion. That's a blend of emotions. But really, all that is a bunch of neural transmitters being released talking to other neurons. And so that happens in different parts of your brain depending on different things that are going on. So when you're experiencing joy, you might see several parts of your brain light up, and happiness, different parts, and then sadness, different parts. But then so all, different parts of your brain are associated with different emotion centers, for example. And on the next slide, we talk about it a little bit more and how areas like the amygdala are for fear, negative emotions for the prefrontal cortex, positive mood for the left frontal lobe. But again, these emotions that we're actually experiencing are nothing really more than neurons releasing neurotransmitters. But these neurons releasing neurotransmitters are cueing us into how we're feeling on the inside and our brain's interpretation of external stimuli. Okay, so the idea that emotions themselves are subjective is the label itself is subjective. Obviously, there's a physiological process involved with the emotions that is patterned. It's in a pattern response. When you experience fear, this pattern of neurons happens. When you experience happiness, this pattern of neurons happens. Okay, but again, you're not very good at working with your emotions until you get a kind of a feel of what it feels like to experience those emotions. So again, think about when you're a child, okay? So children are experiencing similar emotions to adults. They're not really a different of emotion. It's just that children don't know how to perceive what they're feeling. To them, it's like a first time. They don't understand the pattern of what they're feeling. So children don't have as much emotional intelligence as an adult because the feelings they're feeling are very new. They don't understand what they're feeling when those specific neurons are being firing. But as you guys get older, you learn to make sense of your emotions, hence the development of emotional intelligence over time, where once you begin to feel happiness time and time again, you learn what happiness actually is, and then you can attach a word to it. Once you felt anger enough times, now you kind of know what it feels like to be angry. And so when you feel anger, you're a little bit more wise about it. You're like, well, instead of acting on my anger today, I'm just going to tell you that Right now I'm angry. Let's talk about our feelings instead of blah, 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 like when you're in a fight, right? So that's why next time you're about to have a conflict with someone, not like a physical one, but like, your typical relationship or friendship conflict or work conflict, when you start to experience those emotions, reflect upon what you're feeling and then kindly, nicely talk about your feelings. Well, the neurons on my brain are firing, which is causing me to feel something. I'm going to label those neurons and the feeling I'm having is anger. And then I'm going to tell you that right now, because of you not showing up for work on time, I'm experiencing anger. And, but as we get older, we get better at doing that because we're better at the pattern recognition of what we're actually experiencing. We're better at the pattern recognition of understanding our emotions in general. But again, our emotions motivate us, okay? This supports our survival because if something in the environment happens and we get an emotional rise, our sympathetic nervous system kicks in and all of a sudden we're like, okay, what do I need to do? Do I need to protect myself? Is something happening? What's going on? Should I be wound up? Should I be ready to pounce? And so again, these emotions have supported our survival, and our emotion centers and our ability to reflect upon our emotions in our cerebral cortex have evolved more over time. Okay, so again, our emotions focus our attention and they energize our action, but a lot of our behavior that results from our emotion comes from physiological and unconscious motivations. So again, it's up to us, to use our conscious mind to reflect upon what we're feeling, to maybe think before we behave a little bit, okay? Because again, because your neural pathways go mostly from your inner brain to your outer brain, you tend to feel first and think second. Sometimes you think first, which is how stress works, which we're about to talk about, like how your cognitions then send signals back to your brain, which then influence your body. But again, most neural pathways go from your emotions to your thoughts, which is why we tend to be very responsive and very reactive before we're even thinking about what we're doing, like if you're in like an altercation or some kind of minor conflict with your significant other or something. So next time a fight's about to break out, realize that you're feeling stuff, but you haven't really thought about what you're feeling yet. Maybe you should take a second and think about what you're feeling before you just respond to your significant other and then ruin the day and ruin dinner, and then everybody's angry at each other for the rest of the day, which is never really fun. When you get emotional, your heart races, your pace quickens, your senses heighten, okay? You have this combination of your body being aroused. Think about it. Can you feel your emotions in your body? It's not just a mind. It's a mind-body thing, okay? It's associated with you expressing behaviors. Again, you feel an emotion that motivates you to behave, and then it's also associated with your conscious experience of what you're doing because as you get older, you begin to understand what your body is doing, how you're feeling. And so you have hopefully enough wisdom to begin to reflect and get some more control over yourself and your emotions. So, again, these basic emotions like joy, anger, interest, disgust, surprise, sadness, fear, contempt, guilt, these are all just blends. They're like imagine that humans have this range of emotions from here to here, happiness to sadness, joy to anger. Okay, somewhere along these matrices. Okay, a continuum of emotions. But our what we're actually able to feel is limited by our biology because realize that these emotions you're feeling are actually biological responses. They're your neurons, the cells in your brain releasing neurotransmitters. So when you're experiencing joy, you also might experience sadness. Like think when you're at a funeral when, you're so happy for your time you spent with that person that you had them, but you're so sad that they're gone. So you can experience two things simultaneously. But again, that's the idea of just neurons are firing in different parts of your brain, causing you to experience these emotions. So what you might find is a lot of these emotions tend to blend over each other. Okay? So again, when you get emotional, when you get stressed, okay, you have these physiological responses. The book talks about it as the fight or flight, which is simply when you get aroused, when you get emotional, okay, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, okay, and it, you know, kicks out some energy and your heart starts going wild and you start breathing when, you start perspirating and your pupils dilate. And then when you calm down, your sympathetic nervous system is responsible for that. It triggers a certain neurons to calm you down. So think about it when you're a batter and you're playing baseball, right? When you go up to plate, right? Your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, you're ready, you're anticipating, your heart's going up a little bit, you get excited, and you swing, and then you run the bases, and then once you get back to the dugout, you're like, all right, your parasympathetic system kicks in, and you're cool again. But then next time you got to go up to bat again, you're like, oh, And again, that's the sympathetic kicking in, parasympathetic calming. And it's that whole big process, okay? But again, realize that your emotions are occurring in different parts of your brain. I'm not going to make you guys map all that out, okay? Humans do engage in also nonverbal communication of our emotions. We use our facial expressions. A lot of it's universal. Women are better at doing this than men. They're just better at the whole emotional intelligence and social skills. Could be because their brain is more developed in those areas. Let's not even debate the sex differences of the brain today. We've talked about that a lot in the past. Just some things to think about. And then stress to wrap all this up. Okay, is this process of appraising your internal and external stimuli. So, your cognitions, your perceptions of what you're feeling on the inside and what you're experiencing on the outside are then associated with your body itself. Okay, so stress is simply how you appraise and respond to a threatening or challenging event. So your cognitions, the way you interpret stimuli, is associated with whether or not something is perceived as stressful to you or not. So we have these types of stresses, catastrophes, life changes, and daily hassles. But again, it's how you cope with the stress and how you deal with the stimuli that's associated with whether or not your sympathetic nervous system gets aroused. Okay? So, like, let's say you're a parent and you're working and you're going to school and you're all over the place and you're picking up the kids here and you got this going on and you're starting to get some anxiety because you got a lot going on and you're starting to experience stress. Again, your sympathetic nervous system is being aroused. However, if you just let it all go and you're like, you know what, I don't have any control over this, and then you just put on some music, get yourself a coffee, and just go about the motions in a more chilled manner, you're going to experience less stress. Okay, so this idea is your body has this general adaptation syndrome. Okay, when your cognitions interpret things as alarming, stressful, um, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, okay? But this constant kicking in of your sympathetic nervous system is then associated with a reduction in your immune system, which then is associated with increased risk of heart disease and cancer. So, what's really interesting about stress is your cognitions, your perceptions of reality, of what's happening on the inside, and what's the stimuli from the external social context is then associated with your actual body. So, again, this mind body interaction. And so, in health psychology, we're studying this mind body interaction. How your thoughts can actually influence your body and increase your likelihood of cancer is mind boggling. Okay? And this is, again, what we would study like in behavioral medicine. Again, how is your cognitions, your behavior, your brain structure, the way you think, your trauma in your life, then associated with the actual physical processes, the reducing of the immune system efficiency, which then increases your likelihood of certain diseases. Okay? And so then type A people, the people that are more hostile and always have to win and aggressive, tend to have higher rates of heart disease than type B people who tend to be more chilled and relaxed. And again, this is because of your thinking. Your thinking is then introducing stress into your life, which is then kicking in your body's general adaptation syndrome, which is then kicking in your body's sympathetic nervous system, but the constant kicking in of the sympathetic nervous system then eventually wears you down. Okay, so this is why type B personalities tend to have longer life expectancies than type A personalities. Okay, so to cope with stress, there's a lot of key things. You have emotional, cognitive, and behavioral methods. Again, emotional, learning to cope with your emotions, learning to understand them better, learning to express them better. Cognition, thinking, how do you think about your emotions? How do you think about stress? And behavior, how do you behave? Do you just freak out? Or can you learn to go zen and do some meditation? There's problem focused coping, which is changing the stressor Okay, so if something stressed you out, change the stressor. Either get rid of it or manage the stressor or change how you interact with that stressor. If you can't get rid of the stressor, you can at least hopefully change how you respond to the stressor. And then you have emotion focused coping. Okay, avoidance, ignoring, attending to emotions. Again, learning to develop that emotional intelligence. Okay. So, for relieving stress, again, social support, exercise, relaxation, happiness, finding your potential, fulfilling meaning, improving your overall well being, guys. But overall, it's your thinking and your behavior. So, if you can deal with your cognitions, deal with your behavior, and reduce the stress and reduce the stressors in your life, or at least find better ways to manage the stressors and how you think and cope with the stressors, you tend to reduce stress. Thank you so much.